So I'm going to do three things. I'm going to be talking first about history, how the revolution happened. I'll probably not spend that much time on the statistics. I presume many of you know those statistics. But there are lessons in the formation of this revolution that we need to keep in mind. There are development lessons, and there are things that I believe policymakers, and Bill put up there, what should you say to the economics minister as regards what to do. I think there are a lot of stories within here. Second, I'll be talking about a particular impact evaluation study. And so we economists want to know, all these claims about the mobile phone being so important, are they real? Can you measure the impact? I'll argue that yes, you can, but it's extremely difficult. I'll have some cautionary notes in there. And then finally, I'll also mention why I'm so excited about the mobile phone revolution. I'll tell you some of the things we are doing in the field. I will actually show you some apps, some screenshots of some apps. And so all very exciting stuff, okay? So think of the talk as being divided into the past, intrapreneurship, global flows of technology, migrants, brain drain. All of that will come in the past. Think about the present, all the things that exist today. How do you measure their impact? What's going on the field? And in the future, the apps, the applications of the apps. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. So you should be seeing on your board there the rapid expansion in mobile phone usage, okay? And so there are thousands of statistics around these lines. When you look at African countries, the numbers are fascinating. Kenya is about 40 million people. The number of mobile phone subscriptions, about the size of the population. My home country, Ghana, about the same thing. About 30 million or so subscriptions, population of the country, about the same. United States, same thing. About 300 million people, about 300 million subscriptions, okay? It's grown rapidly in each case. So this is one situation where African nations have been sort of like the United States, which is not a bad thing. We normally hear of terrible things in Africa. This doesn't work, that doesn't work. If you're working on Africa, it's just upsetting. We're always sitting down and there's always, why don't you go learn from these people? Why don't you go learn from those people? And these guys are doing it right. If only you do this, you too will reach nirvana. Anyway, this is one thing I think we've got right. And what I'm going to do first, as I said, the past. How did it happen? What happened? What is the story? Okay? And so I'm just going to lead you through some examples of some individuals. I'm going to tell the story of intrapreneurship. I'm going to mention some individuals and how it happened. And again, the story I want you to keep in mind is not so much the biographies of these people, although they're extremely wonderful biographies, but what's the story behind them? How did it happen? What are the lessons for development economics that we can get out of all of this, okay? So that's what I'm going to say to you. All right, so I'm going to begin with the first one, but perhaps I'll even go further into history. Before I talk about Strive, who's been here several years, let me just pause for a second and sort of salute an industry that was in existence 130 years ago. So 130 years ago, 100 years ago, 80 years ago, I'm sure there were seminars like this, not in the United States, but probably in the UK, where they were talking about African success stories. They were talking about global flows of technology. Anybody know what that was? 1900, 1920? Africa was a big success. Yes. So no, something in Africa. Ivory, yeah, close. Cash crops. So this was a time when cocoa came all across West Africa. Ghana became one of the leading producers of cocoa and other cash crops. That was a time when all of a sudden there was a lot of entrepreneurial activity. Cocoa is a great example because Africans don't consume cocoa, right? They don't have a sweet tooth for it. It was a private individual, in Ghana's case, Tete Kwashi, left the country. The British were in charge of Ghana at that time. And this private individual, despite rules by the British, snuck underneath the eyes of the British, went into Equatorial Guinea, brought in some cocoa seeds, developed them on their own, found new technology, how to develop it. Ghana was a war-torn state at that time. The Ashantis were fighting the British. And yet, despite that, over about 20 years, 30 years, Ghana produced from zero a third of the world's cocoa. Anytime you eat chocolate, think of Ghana, okay? What has that got to do with mobile phones? Let's talk about Strive. So Strive is an African businessman. One of the key interesting things about business people in Africa, a lot of them, strong Christian values. Okay, so I think here we talk about the Protestant ethic. And those of you who are watching, there is a Christian ethic, okay? Zero tolerance for corruption. Strong belief in religion. Start meetings with a prayer. End meetings with a prayer. Okay, this is something we see all across Africa these days. And if you just friend Strive Masayiwa on his Facebook page, you actually be getting daily sermons. A little quote from the Bible. Strive was born in the then Rhodesia. It was during the time of Ian Smith's UDI, Unilateral Declaration of Independence. He fled to Zambia because of the white colonial administration. He migrated to Scotland and then University of Wales. Let me pause here. And I think Michael Clemens is going to talk a little bit about that. Global transfer of knowledge, migration. I'm sure whoever was doing the statistics in Rhodesia at that time would have classified Strive as being a member of the brain drain. And if then was like today, Strive would be in bad situation because everybody would say, bad you've left your country, you've left Africa, and you're part of something bad happening in Africa. Let me pause for a second. He asked himself whether he wanted to be part of the guerrilla movement. And so many of you know the story of Rhodesia. You know the story of Robert Mugabe. You know the story of many people having to choose between going for further education and being part of the guerrilla movement. For many people my age, that was a big deal. Okay, so right now, many of these countries have received their independence. It's as if we've forgotten the trade-offs that many people at that time had. Anyway, his relatives told him, no, do not come back. Do not fight in this guerrilla war. Instead, study, because one day we will win these wars and we'll need people to come back and run the economy, build businesses. So that's what he did. He came back around the 1990s. At that time, the Zimbabwe Post and Telecommunications Company was in charge of telecom. In those days, as many of you know, everything was landlines, okay? African nations were struggling to build their landline infrastructure. Today, when we're talking about the mobile phone revolution, what you hear the most is that mobile phones were great because Africans didn't invest in landlines and therefore were able to leapfrog a technology. And that's what's great about the mobile phone revolution. That is true, but what you should also understand is that the landlines were controlled by the governments, big bureaucracies, huge amounts of corruption. I once tried around that same time to set up some landlines in my home country, Ghana. You have to bribe an official. You have to wait a year before you get a landline. Okay? So it's not so much the fact that you were skipping a technology. It was instead, as many of you know, there was something about the mobile phone technology itself which bypassed the government and allowed the entrepreneurial spirit to succeed. In any event, around that time, 1993, Econet is the company that he formed, wanted to go into the mobile phone business. This is what was around the time when those technologies were coming up. And of course, the ZPTC, the Zimbabwe Post and Telecommunications Company, and the political establishment did not want him to form this company, okay? One of the great things of the British tradition is they have these courts, and he actually appealed to the legal system. He failed many times, But if you ever talk to him, you see that he's a very strong personality. He just kept at it, okay? So this is, again, the entrepreneurial zeal that he had. He formed the company. He started his mobile phone operations. Despite that, the climate that was in existence in Zimbabwe just meant that even though he had a very good company in Zimbabwe, he had to physically domicile himself in South Africa. His company has since expanded. So those of you who know Econet all know that it's now in existence in many countries within the continent of Africa. Strive himself among Zimbabweans, Kenyans, and a lot of East Africans. When I talk to my students and I mention his name, he's one of the heroes. When he moved into Nigeria, and Nigeria, as you know, is a very complicated country to work in. It's one of the most vibrant countries I know of. If you go to their markets, you find business deals all over. But it's also been plagued by a lot of corruption over the past years. He went in there and just decided he was going to have up front a zero tolerance for corruption policy, which is extremely hard to have in that country. And yet his strong spirit, and again, his Christian values come into play. He was able to create a very great company. It reminds me of a friend, Ken Oforiata. He won an award here. A very similar trajectory in the sense of having zero tolerance for corruption, strong Christian values. He set up Ghana's foremost investment banking company. So the two of them are roughly the same age and roughly the same ways of doing business. I could keep going on and telling you about, since then, the expansion of his company, Econet. Mascom now has 70% market share in neighboring Botswana. It's in Lesotho. It's in Kenya. It's in Burundi. And in a first, or one of several, it's now a company which is exporting its services outside Africa into the UK, into New Zealand. And so again, cross-border flows of technology. He's one of my success stories. It's a $1 billion operation. And he's been recognized in the United States. He's on the board of Rockefeller, Agra, etc. Very quickly, you all know the story of Ibrahim. He's similar. Sudanese national, began his career working for the Sudanese state telephone company. He had the company Celtel, which he sold for $3.4 billion. Again, he went abroad. I think it was University of Birmingham, if I'm not wrong. Okay. Again, if somebody had taken a snapshot, he would have been called a member of the brain drain. And yet, one of the successes. Yaw Nyarko, I believe, is from Gambia, and he deserves honorable mention because he set up a cell phone company in what I think is the most difficult African nation to work in, Congo, DRC. Okay, so you could keep on going on. That's sort of the first third of this paper. In the paper itself, we go into a bit more detail. But again, what are the key points? Entrepreneurship is important. Sidestepping the government is important. It's one of the things that private individuals are the ones who brought the mobile phone into African nations against the better wishes of the government, who sometimes took them to court to prevent private individuals from engaging in that business. Okay, so that's the first third. That's the past. We move to the current. Mobile phones. We talk a lot about them. Are they any good? Are they doing all the great things we think they're doing? How do we measure their impact? So that's the second part of this. And here, let me just remark, at least those of us who've been in the profession for a long time, we see this as waves. There is a lot of skepticism about the importance of mobile phones. There are a lot of people out there who just say, well, it's one of those fads, you just keep on talking about it. There's no data which is supporting the fact that mobile phones have impact. And I recall about, was it 1987? Bob Solow came up with a statement which rings true. He says this was a time when we were all so fascinated about computers. And so if we're having a meeting at that time, it will all be about the computer revolution, how important it is. And you guys may find it surprising, but in those days, people were saying that computers are useless. It's a fad. economists were trying to find the importance of computers, and so Bob Solow came up with this big quip that you see computers everywhere except in the economic productivity statistics. And so it took a long time for us to actually be able to measure the impact of computers on the economy. If we were having that meeting, many of the economists in the room would have been saying at that time, I don't think people are even going to be using computers. There's no impact. So anyway, my view is that today we stand here at a similar point with the mobile phone. I actually think that down the road, the mobile phone was going to be your wallet. It's going to be your navigation tool. You go to your apartment, you're going to be opening the door with it. You're going to regulate your electricity with it. That's the future. But for now, there is in the literature a lot of skepticism. I'll just give you a few papers. This began with Jensen, mobile phones, fishermen in Kerala. He got one of the first positive results. The fishermen use the mobile phones to determine where on the coast to send their catch. Fish goes bad. Knowing where your market is a good thing. Jenny Acker and Isaac Mbiti, many of their results show negative impacts. They try and explain why. They do a lot of work in Africa as well. You've got other papers. Kamori, Fafshan Minton, all say negative. The Goyal paper, a little bit of positive in it. Yanigizawa, a little bit of positive in it, but even there, it's nuanced and it's not as forthcoming as it could be. In a paper very similar to what we've done, using almost the same data as we have, there's a paper which shows no impact. And all of these are studies of giving farmers information on their cell phones and figuring out, so the farmers get the information, prices of their commodity in the big markets. Are they able to use it to bargain better? Are they able to use it to make better agricultural decisions? Okay? No impact. So if you're reading this literature, you would say to yourself, well, all this talk about mobile phones is all hype. There's nothing there. Just a bunch of people, maybe they want to get some new grants. They want to just stand up and talk to you guys. And I just mouthing off about this thing called mobile phones, okay? So we decided about 3 years ago to look for some funding. Was it 3 years ago? Yeah, about 3 years ago, I think I was in this, a similar DRI conference, and I was talking about my belief in the mobile phones. I think it was 4 years ago, so 3 times ago, okay? It's that long. And in my talk, this was one of the first DRI conferences, I think I'd mentioned the fact that we would like to have this study. And I hope there's similar people in the audience, but somebody came up to me afterwards and said, yeah, I actually like what you're doing, and why don't you talk to me a little bit later for some cash to go and run an experiment. So if any of you are in the audience with a lot of money, raise your hands after this. I'll give you my card. So we got some funding to actually go in, spend a lot of time, and do carefully an impact evaluation of the importance of mobile phones for farmers. So it's just a picture of some markets in Ghana. We chose a particular part of Ghana, the Volta region. We intentionally chose a place. Ghana has become so popular among aid agencies. It's actually hard to find a place where there are no aid agencies, but we finally found a place. Okay, it's in the northern part of the Volta region. And we went out there and we did a randomized controlled trial. So we sort of went into this large area. We formed clusters. Think of them as collections of villages that are next to each other. And half of them, we gave them mobile phones and text alerts, telling them what the price of goods are in the neighboring markets. The others, we gave them nothing. They are our control. Then we observed those people across time, 3 years, actually 2 years, baseline, middle, end line, and just said, across that time, do we see anything which is different in their behavior? In other words, let's do this properly and figure out mobile phones, do they really help? We went out there and interviewed farmers, worked with farmers. First thing some of you will be saying, poor farmers, are they going to be able to use the mobile phone? They figured it out. Okay, they figured out how to use those mobile phones. Second thing you could say is, why don't these people just call their friends in the cities and ask them, what are the prices? If you go into any of these rural countries, going into a market is non-trivial. Who are you going to ask? Who's your friend? How do you trust your friend? What are you going to say to your friend? Hey, buddy, you've got nothing to do today, so just go into the market and start asking some random people the price of yams in that particular market. It's not easy to do. Even after you found the price, you don't know the trader, what that trader's costs are. So if you know the price is this, what are you going to say to the trader? Okay? Anyway, we went out there, we did this study, randomized control study, and control trial. And so the long and short of all of that, this is Ghana, this is the region we did it in. What is the long and short of it? Long and short of it, there are two sort of morals to this story. When we looked at baseline in year one, as in most of the studies, we actually found there was a little bit of an impact in the first few years, but then it died off. Nothing. So if we had ended our experiment after year one, we'd get next to no impact of mobile phones. We did it for 2 years, and we did some very in-depth data gathering and economics, and the punchline is as follows. We believe that the mechanism is as follows. Farmers get the text alerts. Initially, they bargain very hard with traders. They get a good outcome. Traders then figure out that, hey, around this area, I think there's something going on. These farmers actually know what the prices are. And so traders going into that larger area begin to offer higher prices to both the treatment farmers and the control farmers, which are around the treatment farmers. You understand? So that you don't see any longer a difference between those who got our text alerts and those who did not, but who look like or are around the treatment. Okay? So there's a lot of fancy economics that had to go into that, networks and how connected these people are to each other, but that's the final result. So in other words, after about 2 years of research, that is our conclusion. We believe now it has impact. So there's a paper out on that. I think it's on our webpage if you want the details. So in other words, similar to what happened in 1987 after the solo remark, if you work hard at the economics, you will find an impact. As today we all know, who would say in the room that computers are not useful? Anybody? Anyway, that's where we are there. Okay, so that's that. And let's talk about the future. Warning, as with others, I don't believe that there's a panacea that mobile phones can solve every problem. Too many times you'll find people just coming to me and say, hey, Yaw, I want to build an app to solve the healthcare problem in Africa. You're not going to do that. You can make small interventions, slowly over time, we can build some things, but it's not a panacea. So let me tell you some of the things we've been doing. So number one, you need to go into the field. You need to talk to people. You need to understand what the realities on the ground. You cannot sit here in the United States, build any app and think it's going to work. So we've gone into a small area called Kumu, which is in the Ashanti region of Ghana. And that actually is a tiny bit of NYU in the middle of the bush. That's our CTED office. And if you see it moving here, it's another technology that I'm kind of really fond of. The drone. You know these little drones, they go up in the air. They're just amazing. They just take these pictures. Anyway, that's the area we're in. I'll pause a second here so you can get a good feel of the place. The particular town we're in is fairly developed, relatively speaking. There's still no running water. There's lack of any modern sanitation there, drainage systems, but it's a charming little town, okay? Next to it is one of the most deprived areas in Ghana, the next constituency over. No high school there, no doctor there, for a population of, tens of thousands, okay? Two papers today, Stelios and Leonard, are going to be talking about traditional areas. That's also my belief right now. So the man you see in there is the traditional ruler of the large area that we're working in. And so again, we don't believe the governments are the most efficient at delivering services. What if we try the traditional leaders? Many Africans still have enormous respect for those leaders. So anyway, this is the chief of that area. 3 ways in which the mobile phone can be helpful. I call it governance, agricultural extension, and markets. These are 3 things I am currently excited about, and our team in Ghana, that's what they're working on. Governance. We went into this area and we asked a simple question. Tell us the towns that are here. Give us a map. There are no maps. You go on Google, you go on Bing, towns, you're in a town, you know the town exists. It doesn't exist on Google Maps or Bing. So what do? You can draw a picture, the most traditional way of drawing a map. Or, as we did, we gave a large number of people mobile phones. We built an app, and we just said, hey, next time you're going into your village, just press this button. The button will get the GPS coordinates of that particular village, write in the name of the village, and hit send. That's it. We've now created maps which are as detailed as can be, okay? So something as simple as that, there are no maps in the place. Nobody knows, there's no map showing you where one thing is from the other. So you've got these maps of towns. We give these things to farmers and tell them to go around your farm. And all of a sudden, we've got the boundary of a farm. We know what's being produced in the farm. You take a picture of the farm. You can actually make an estimate of the output of the farm. So these reds and greens and blues, that's one of the things we're doing there. Okay, so we're mapping out this area. The area in question is about 800 hectares, 8,000 square kilometers, or 3% of the land mass of Ghana is this kingdom. So that's our app. Those of you who understand what all this stuff is, I just showed you some pictures. Second thing you could ask your mobile phones to do is exactly what I said. Make predictions about output. How is that done currently? You take a map, you try and get some random areas, and then you tell your enumerators, Ministry of Food and Agriculture, go there and take some measurements. There's this funny thing where you throw a stick and you try and make it random where the stick lies. You get a 10 by 10 cut, and you tell the farmer, that cut is mine. Allow me to measure it. It takes an enormous amount of time. It's not efficient. You get the data. It's all on pieces of paper. You go to the ministries right now. They've got these stacks of paper. It appears as if nobody ever reads them. But the vermin and the little insects are having a field day with it. Build an app. An app can randomly pick a point, can go around a circle, get the boundary, and then tell the farmer to give you the output that's coming from that particular area, right? And so the MOFA people, Ministry of Food and Agriculture people, have told us that that's already saved 50% of their time effort right there. Then finally, what gets me the most excited? Markets. If you go and talk to farmers and you ask them what's the principal thing that is preventing you from getting bigger, they will not tell you that it's aid. In fact, many of them do not want to go to the local rural bank. Why? They're scared of getting credit, not being able to pay for it at the end of the year, and having somebody seize their goods, send them to prison, say mean things about them, etc. So many of the farmers actually do not want to get credit. The one thing they'll all ask for, markets. You give us the markets, we will do what is right. Again, back to the story of cocoa. It's the indigenous people create that sustained market for cocoa. They will figure out how to grow it, where to grow it, what to do, how to get the technology. So here are some markets. And again, we've done this, and there's some others who have done the same thing. Match sellers, producers on your mobile phones. So when a trader, somebody who wants to buy yams, tomatoes, comes into a region, you just text, it goes onto the system, Those who want to buy those things, they've registered on the system, and you're just crossing, okay? So this is kind of exciting work because I think I'm like a investment banker for the poor, okay? It's, I'm creating a market all on the mobile phone. So anyway, that's the other thing that makes me somewhat excited. And again, we've got an app for this. There's another team in Uganda that's doing exactly the same thing. You may ask me, if all of these things are smartphone-based, will these poor farmers ever buy these mobile phones? And the answer is yes. Once they figure out that this thing has value, they will purchase them. As I was coming from Ghana about 3-4 days ago, somebody comes up to me and says, hey, can you take some money for me, equivalent of $60, which for them is a lot of money, buy me a smartphone. I have my regular, what they call feature phones. They're usually Chinese phones, very cheap. I want a real one so I can press these buttons and do some trade with it. It's actually impressive. A couple of other things that I'm sort of interested in. You may tell me that there are some places without cell phone coverage, although that's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Even there are things you can do. There's something called a picocell. I don't know if you guys know what a picocell is. But essentially you can, this is our research center. You get a solar panel, you put something up there, and you can actually beam cell phone coverage to an area. So if there's a rural area without cell phone coverage, you get something which is called the long haul to get it into the system, and then you beam it into the locality here. So all of you know of M-Pesa. Along those lines, money transfer. M-Pesa is now a company which is exporting its technology around the world. Commodities exchanges are coming. Sort of think of that as a variant of the apps we are creating, but in a more centralized manner. And again, the farmers interact with that through the mobile phone. And as I said before, this is an image of a farm using a drone, okay? Which is the other part of the technology that I like a lot. So anyway, let me conclude here. And so again, what are the key points? What's the message out of this? Number one, entrepreneurship is very important. That's what caused the mobile phone revolution to come in here into Africa. And in case you're thinking that there's something natural about mobile phones, some countries have decided not to allow their entrepreneurs in. I think Ethiopia, it's only maybe this past year that they've allowed entrepreneurs to come in. So whereas Ghana has penetration about 100% of the population, my understanding is Ethiopia is still about 34%. And to this day, private individuals are not allowed into the country. I think there are now two Chinese companies, Huawei and ZTE, who are in there. There is nothing special about the mobile phone technology. It's just that it came in, and many countries at that time had the foresight, the ideology was appropriate to allow for entrepreneurship, private enterprise to work. Apropos of the theme of this talk, global transfers of technology are extremely important. Many of these people went to foreign countries, brought them in. As Michael Clemens will say later on, having people leave is a good thing because often they leave and they pick up new technologies, new forms of entrepreneurship. Just imagine if Sudan had decided, as many NGOs now say, that we should lock up African countries and allow nobody to leave for further education. We may not have a Mo Ibrahim. We may not have a Strive Masaiwa. Would that be a good thing? So again, international borders, all of the themes of this conference, all extremely important. Mobile phones are great, but the message behind the mobile phones, I think, even more important, and that's what we should say to our economics minister, finance minister, etc. Thank you very much for listening.
While it doesn't fall within the purview of your paper, I'm curious what impact the cell phone revolution has had on journalism. That as we see the kind of impact that blogging and social networking have had here, I'm wondering whether or not there's any observable impact on journalism.
Journalism, the fourth branch of government, I think it's, without a doubt, it's going to be very important. Just text messaging, material from place A to place B. It's enormously useful. I have some people who are giving me text messages of what people are saying about the political leaders. Ghana is about to go through election time, and so you're getting a lot of these things out there. A lot of the journalists are texting things back and forth. When we have elections, everybody's sitting by the polling booth texting. Another person has gone in, so that's one vote. Another person, and so it's going to be huge. I haven't seen any studies on the impact, but I believe that it's very big. Okay.
So I was curious as to if the studies shown are limited by the focus on agriculture and farming only, and in consideration of how this can be useful for community health worker networks or youth civic engagement and so on. And then also as far as moving away from just simple messaging to app development, if the towers, the picocells that you mentioned, that provides internet access as well. And so whose responsibility you envision it would be to put up these towers, and then how it might work as far as asking the local population to have monthly subscriptions for internet or so on?
Health and civic engagement of the youth, yes, is going to be extremely important, okay, without a doubt. I haven't studied that. I encourage the rest of you to study the impacts of all of those things. Again, it's not going to solve the healthcare problem, right? You need doctors. I mean, you can't do anything without that. You need nurses, but it can go a long way there. Picocells. My understanding is the Constitution of Mexico has the word picocells in it, okay? And every district within Mexico has the right to create their own picocells if the mobile phone companies are not doing what they should do. Who should be paying for it? That's a big political question. The mobile phone companies are supposed to provide their services across the nation. It takes time to do that. So if an NGO decides to put picocells in a region, the government can insist on that being paid by the mobile phone company, okay? And so that's my own view on it. If it's an area where the people themselves are getting big value in the mobile phone service, you'll be able to charge them something. In Ghana, the rules are such that you're actually not supposed to be doing that. And so as we were testing these things, there's something called white space. And so you look for a white space and you put your experimental cell phone calls there. Otherwise, MTN will come and arrest me and you'll see me in chains or something, okay? It's against the law to interfere with the spectrum of mobile phone companies. In any event, so my answer to you is either the NGOs themselves or you get it from the charter that the cell phone companies are supposed to be operating under.
Would you like to comment on the sale of scratch cards as a byproduct of this industry?
Scratch cards are extremely important. There's a man called Chenry Hesse. He's got a company called SoftTribe. And so he does a lot of payment system. So you want to buy something from one person to another, you give money to one person, and the other person gives you the good. All of that is scratch card technology. Okay, so extremely exciting. I think it's something which is going hand in hand with the mobile phone industry. And it's amazing what those little things can do. It's a form of authentication. Sort of like Western Union, they'll give you a secret number. The other person on the other side has to mention that secret number to get the cash out. Similar technology.
I have a question about sort of urban-rural divides in cell phones and the extent to which cell phones in rural areas contributes to people's sense of being modern in the world or in modernity.
Of course, okay? You have some extremely remote areas. They talk to, they got their own small communities. Having the mobile phone gives them access all over. So without a doubt, that's important. I hope our anthropologists will study that further.
I was wondering in terms of data collection, you did say that the per capita there's 40 million Ghanaians, and I lived in the region before. So I was wondering if the Volta region is a unique area in the sense that there's not widespread mobile usage in that area. If there was any cross-contamination from the people you gave the phone toll as compared to those who are in the region.
And so what is the issue? The issue is that the positive results we're getting, you might say, may be influenced by the fact that when we give text messages to one person in our treatment, the control group also gets that information, right? So that's the bad thing. So I have two responses to that. First of all, to the extent that that's true, that would bias downwards our results, right? Because we're looking at the differential between those who have and those who have not. So if there's some leakage and we're still getting positive, hey, our results are even stronger, right? So that's response number one. Response number two, we actually did some checks. We did some questions, control, treatment. What do you know about prices? What is your prediction of prices? Okay? And so we didn't find too much spillover. The design of the experiment was purposely to counter for that.
Direct question, who owns your data that is being collected from all of your apps, which look really very snazzy. Also wondering if there are any lessons to be learned from corporations who've been brought to scale in the developing world, such as Econet, any strategies to avoid pilotitis, and public versus private sector, more or less likely to invest in these type of pilots. Thanks.
Who owns the data? I'm a researcher. As soon as I get all the permissions, you guys own the data. It's going to be on our webpage. Old papers that I've written, all the data is up there. So I think there was somebody over here who asked the question. If you want to do further research on it, come talk to me. Econet and pilotitis. And I think that means too many pilots, right? Is that what it means? I think, okay. I like the phrase by Martin Luther King, had this thing about, I think he called it analysis paralysis. Okay, I just had a word with word. You're thinking about these things so many times, you never get to the action stage. So you're doing so many little pilots, you never actually deploy. In the case of Econet, it's a big company. They have deployed. It's a money-making venture. Okay, so without a doubt, that's not suffering from that. And all of the work we are doing, we're actually piloting as we're actually deploying as we speak. We finished the pilots and let the market decide whether what we have is useful or not. Thank you all for listening.